Thanks for stopping by Big Top Gaming. My name's Brian, and in this video, you'll see my first Warmachine battle report. And the other thing about this is that this is me playing against myself. I wanted to first nail down my format for Warmachine battle reports, and then second, I was just kind of taking the example that was set by some content creators in the Warmachine world, and I figured to give it a shot and see how it turns out. For the Legion list, you'll see this one looks pretty familiar. It's the Anamag Primal Terrors list that Matt McWaters took to second place at Captain Con, it was, I believe. And Legion in Mark III is new for me, especially Primal Terrors, because I had played in Mark II and dropped out of Legion when Mark III had hit. And when I get back into a faction or a theme, I like to take something that someone else has made and kind of learn it on my own to figure out what I want to do with it in terms of tinkering with it. So that's what I've got here. For the Infernal list, this is essentially the Omodamos list that I've been playing since I first picked up Infernals, and I do like the 4 Tormentor version over the 5 Tormentor version, and really that's just my personal flavor on it. I think you can play either and do really well with them, but for me, I like bringing a lot of the support options that Infernals have available to them, and I think the more people play into Infernals, the more they're going to learn that taking out Marked Souls and trying to scalpel out cultists is a really good way to try and subvert the Infernal game plan. So this is just the way I enjoy playing. I prefer to have more support and have more options and make sure that I don't give my opponent a straight answer on how to deal with what it is that I'm bringing. I do really like keeping Nicaea around. I know when I played Saxon in this before she came out, Saxon was often like one of the first things to get summoned, but Nicaea's been doing a lot of work, and it's just nice to have those extra Marked Souls. So the Infernals won the roll to go first, and Anamag chose the side that she's on right now, that Forest is really well positioned to protect Hellmouths, and the building's at a really good angle to protect that one, which I think that building comes from Tectonic Craft Studios, and I've had it for years, and I've yet to paint it, but maybe this will help me find the motivation to do so. I don't like the Hellmouths being that far up, and they are probably one of the more threatening things, or at least the thing I'm focusing on the most right now, because the heavies are pretty low defense and can get pulled in really easy. So I want to try and mitigate those as much as I can. But I do run the Wretch up forward and turn him into a Desolator right away. I think that given the position of the Blightbringer and the max unit of Chosen, that they're probably going to be the most likely target for Bond of Gristle and Bone. So putting up something around there to mitigate that armor, I think, is going to be beneficial for me. And I am pretty heavy on that upper side because I have more tools to take out the Blightbringer and the Chosen. Unfortunately, though, that house is really kind of cramping my style. And then the hill is also not good for me because I'm playing it as rough terrain, and the tormentors or the heavies are fine going through that, like they don't mind it so much, but the cultists are not really happy with where it's at, and I probably could have curved them around a little bit more. But I do want to leave some room for the rest of my heavies to get through here. I think Valen Hawk is deployed just behind the Infernal Gate, which only rolled 1 soul this turn, which is fine. I don't think it needs any more on turn 1 because this way I don't have to worry about accidentally having souls on it when I get around to turn 2 when I want to roll for more for the gun. So on the lower side, you can kind of see I'm not 100% sure how to attack this right now. Recon is a very live scenario, in my opinion, and especially when you've got these Hellmouths kind of positioned the way that they are, it's going to be hard for me to get ahead on this scenario, so I'll always have to be kind of punching up towards the scenario, just as an Infernal player in general, really. But given the terrain setup, it's not looking super hot for me either, so I kind of have to make a decision on how I want to commit to the table. And right now, I'm kind of positioned in a way to where I can divert to the middle if I want to, which is kind of how I like to play Omodamos, is kind of keep a brick around so that I can really exercise the ridiculousness of Tactician and Countercharge. But I am worried, since the Chosen are deployed so far out, that they're going to just kind of catch me if I don't deal with them. So from the Anamag side, I'm trying to think of how to untie or at least kind of hurt the Omodamos list. And I think the way things are looking right now, the middle's not I don't think the middle's going to be the focal point for him, because the scenario is kind of spread out and divided by those two pieces. And I feel like the way this is going to play out is, if I put things in the zones and start scoring on them, then the Infernal list has to respond to it. They can't just kind of twiddle their fingers and dirtle around trying to do whatever it is they're trying to do. So the Warmongers are setting up in the middle to try and catch any of the stragglers that decide to divert to the middle. But then these Chosen are flanking really hard around the side. That corpse pile from the Ice and Fire game is I'm treating it as like an acid pool. So they want to try and stay away from that. I mean, just in general, everything wants to try and stay away from it. But I have the speed to where I'm not too worried about ever tripping on it. And now I'm running out one of the Hellmouth tentacles to the side. It's still threatening, so the Infernal player has to deal with that tentacle, or else it's going to really cause some problems. And the rest of the tentacles and Golab are still hidden behind that forest, so they're not going to be easy to get to either. Bond of Gristle and Bone did go up on the big unit of Chosen over there, because you stack that with the Blightbringer ore and they become quite difficult to take down. And they're going to do a lot. They're going to try and do a lot of work to get rid of some of those Tormentors. The Blightbringer runs up, and it's unfortunate that it's kind of where it's at, because it's right behind that Hellmouth tentacle, which means it's going to get slowed down. And if I need to unpack the Blightbringer for any reason, it's going to take me a couple turns to do that. But my hope is that it can kind of go towards the center when things get rough over there. But really, the placement on that Blightbringer was just my bad choice. So I start the Infernal turn-off by trying to get one of the Hellmouth tentacles right away. I did, there was a lot of hemming and hawing and finding templates in the beginning, so Regna and Omodamos went back up to full essence by killing one of the cultists in each unit. So the first shot from the 2-soul Infernal Gate ends up deviating backwards. I was hoping to kind of deviate forward to try and land on one of those tentacles. I figured my chances were decent, at least, for trying to get at least one of them. I think it might have been like a 33% chance it deviates in the direction I need it to go to. So now I know that I need to keep this soul on the gate to get one of my tormentors up. So I take the second shot with reload, and it deviates to the 5. So I got nothing good came out of that, but the hope here is the Tormentor is going to trample into the forest and take out some of these Hellmouth tentacles. Now, it seems like that's not the greatest idea in the universe, because I'm going to be giving up a heavy for 2 tentacles. But the more tentacles that are on the table, the worse it's going to be for me, just because the defense on those Tormentors is quite low. And between Carnage or just trying to roll for a 6, like the tentacles are going to have a pretty easy time dragging in my heavies. So I feel like I need to try and limit the production of the tentacles. Not so much limit the production of them, but at least get them down to where they're not so influential or stop me from doing what I want to do. So Nicaea goes up. She's going to try and take out this far one on the bottom side of the screen. She barely hits with a 3 since she's Rat 7. And with the Hellmouth Tentacles being arm 15, she's got to look for a 3 to kill them, which isn't super great in terms of odds, but I'm trying to do what I can just to limit the influence these tentacles have on the table. Now I know that after trampling into the forest that I'm basically giving up that Tormentor for some nothing models that are just going to still keep coming back and making my life miserable. But Nicaea does take out that lower tentacle, which is good for her, good for me, good for the army. I guess it's good and bad for me because I am also the Legion player. She ends up running back behind the clouds just to kind of stay safe. I do like having her as an AD summoning target, but I think I must have forgot to advance deploy her. Just decided not to do it in this game. Maybe I just deployed her behind the clouds. I can't quite remember. But I don't really want to get her up in the business. I kind of want to be able to use her a little bit, even though I think she's probably not great into what we're going into here. So she probably could have just been a summoning beacon and existed like that. But taking out the Hellmouth Tentacle I felt was a good enough deal for me to keep her safe. Next up, the Tormentor tramples into the forest, and it's really not much of a difficult proposition for him to take out these tentacles. He just needs like a 3 or a 4 to hit, and it's just Poof's tentacles because of their arm 15 and I'm POW 17. So those are gone, and I know that Tormentor is just going to die to Golab or even Warmongers. But like I said, I need to try and do something with those tentacles in that zone, and I need to start keeping some of the stuff over there because if the bulk of my army wants to get to the center to try and, because the forest and the house work both ways, right? So right now they're really helping out the Legion player in that they are making me have to split my army out pretty far, but that also means that my opponent, which is me, but the Legion player needs to respect those things, because if the Infernal side decides to go up the middle, there's not a whole lot keeping Anamag, Jesus, why couldn't I think of her name? There's not enough keeping Anamag safe, other than just diverting like Golab and the Warmongers. So the other Tormentor, along with the Cultists and Runewood, kind of run up. The Wretch is sitting there too with enough room to drop a heavy, and they're sitting there hoping that a countercharge can happen off of that other Tormentor when something comes in. Maybe even, hopefully, a Tentacle or something if that's how that shakes out, because being able to countercharge the Tentacle would be quite nice, even though I'm kind of still giving them another Tormentor or just something for them to chew on. I don't think it's a terrible deal for me, because then I don't know, it just feels like it's not a bad idea. We run another Tormentor behind this house, so he's going to be hiding out there for a while just to try and block himself from the Blightbringer. It might make things easier for me in terms of trying to take out the Blightbringer and the Hellmouth Tentacle on my feet turn, because then I can just walk through the building and start punching the Hellmouth and the Blightbringer to try and take those down a little bit. Given where the Hermit's sitting at, it probably shouldn't be too difficult for me to get Master of Ruin on both of those, and with Synergy up, it seems like it's not trivial to take out the Blightbringer, but it makes things a little bit easier for me to try and do that, or at least hurt it a bunch to where it will be struggling for a while throughout the game. My Desolator comes up. The first spray ends up missing the Hellmouth Tentacle. This is another one where I just kind of want to get rid of it. The second one connects, and I boost the damage roll to kill it just to get it out of there. I know that I'm kind of leaving the Desolator there to get charged by the Chosen, but I think I was just really laser focused on dealing with Hellmouth Tentacles and not so much kind of thinking about the repercussions of where I'd put myself. So the Valen Hawk and the other Tormentor go up. I want to make sure Valen Hawk stays well protected too, because there is a lot of unfair synergy that comes with Countercharge and Tactician, and Ghostly on top of that with the feet. So they're trying to stay quite safe and relevant. I think Valen's in base to base with the flag, and Omodamos will probably get there too. So Roger walks up and just pops Harmonious on Omodamos because we do get locked horns up this turn. And you'll notice that I've decided to activate my Shrieker instead of doing anything with Omodamos. I do have enough essence on him between the locked horns reduction with Harmonious and the benefit from being by the Infernal Gate to summon the Tormentor that I planned on. So I end up rolling that back a little bit once this turns over to get that back out there. But I just this is one of the biggest problems for me when it comes to playing summoning focused. Well, they're all summoning focused, but when focus, like I'm trying to deal with going over the turn and figuring out how to set myself up, like summoning just kind of falls off my radar for some reason or another. So I at least had the intention of doing it, so it happens later. So Anamag's pulling all the fury in and just kind of seeing how the table lies out. I think when I flip sides, it's really interesting because you should have a bunch of stuff in your head in terms of like how each army's supposed to work. But I end up playing like just the Infernal turn as an Infernal person, right? And then I don't think so much about everything that the Legion player is going to do in response to everything that I do. So I really focus in on what I'm doing, and then when I flip over to the other side, it's like I'm a completely different player almost. So the Hellmouth Tentacle is able to spawn in a location where it can engage both of the Tormentors, I think. That might be a long reach for that back Tormentor, and maybe I think I switch it up a little bit here. Yeah, here's where it happens. So I'm able to deploy or summon in the Hellmouth Tentacle to where it's engaging both those Tormentors, which wasn't something that I had initially thought about when I was moving things as the Infernal player. And then on the upper side here, we also have that same problem where that Tormentor behind the house gets engaged, and then the Tormentor that's on the flag gets engaged as well. So essentially, we just shut off the counter charges, which is a really big deal, and I probably should have thought about that a little bit more. So the Blightbringer ends up shooting the Desolator just to try and get some damage on it. It does end up rolling quite low damage-wise, and every time I do this, no matter what, I always roll a location die on Infernal Heavies, or Horrors, and I never need it. So I think this is the only time I roll a location on those, but it just is force of habit. So not a lot of damage done to that Desolator, but having the aura that I put out was the +2 strength and +2 armor with the Blightbringer's ability. So that's the main reason why I wanted to get that out there, because I think Anamag already feeded this turn. I think I had to skip ahead a little bit in the editing because there was a lot of running around and grabbing things that I didn't have ready for me. So Anamag's feeded. She's put up Fury of Strength on a couple units and is sitting on 2 Fury right now. So we get the Chosen on the top side are going with an impact. This one's connecting and getting an impact attack. And based on how I was measuring it, I think I'd measured threat and then ended up moving the full distance instead of what I should have rolled or what I should have moved. So the only one that he shouldn't have gotten that impact attack, and I believe after I look at it all over again, I reversed the damage roll on that one because it was quite a tanky damage roll, and I end up fixing that problem because it was definitely not the way it should have played out. So the Chosen they're the ones. There's a couple Chosen that are getting impact attacks on the Tormentor that's behind that house right now, and they're doing a decent amount of damage to him as well. I am forgetting about Locked Horns, which it seems so strange, right? Because as the Infernal player, I cast Locked Horns, I did that. And as Legion, I'm forgetting it. But now you can see me going back, fixing the Desolator impact attack, and I think after everything's said and done, I remember about Locked Horns about halfway through, but the damage amounts that I do and the leftover attacks that I have doesn't really impact it all that much. So these Chosen up here are swinging pretty hard dice, even with Locked Horns up. They've got a Dark Shroud bonus from Anamag's feat. They've got the +2 strength from the Blightbringer. They've got +2 strength from Fury of Strength, and then they've got a Brutal Charge. So they're doing tons of damage to the Desolator up top, and it doesn't take much to end up dropping it. Especially when you're rolling, when you only need like a 4 to hit on 3 dice, it's pretty rough. So the first 2 end up making short work out of the Desolator and drop it, which is good. The more heavies that get taken out this turn, the better. I think my aim is like trying to get at least 3 heavies this turn. But the full unit of Chosen on the upper side, they end up doing quite a bit of damage to the Tormentor behind the building and take it out with even having 1 extra Chosen that just does nothing. So Locked Horns here, forgetting about it was a mistake on my part, but it didn't. I don't believe it changed anything in terms of how much damage would have been done anyways, or which heavies would have been killed. I mean, it would have changed damage for sure, but none of those heavies would have survived any of that. One of them the Desolator had been overkilled by a bunch, and the Tormentor behind the building still had another attack to take from another Chosen, so I don't think it was a huge problem or anything. But I think now the Hellmouth Tentacle at the top of the screen is trying to just drive one into Valenhawk just to try and get some damage on him. I know that taking away Tactician is a really big deal, so I just figured I would give it a shot since he's got, a -2 armor buff on him with Dark Shroud being up there. Amok is running up the side, just kind of being a pain. He'll tow the zone too, just in case something weird happens, because I don't have to worry about Tormentors coming at me through that building anymore because they're gone. I just have the one that's kind of hanging out there, and there's a lot of Chosen around, so that will be a problem, especially with having Bond of Gristle and Bone and that Blightbringer aura up there. It's going to hurt quite a bit. So next up, I move Golab and try and respect the countercharge distance for the one Tormentor that isn't engaged by anything. The last thing I want to do is watch a Tormentor come in and take out an aspect on Golab or something. So I kind of wanted to get something into this Tormentor first so that I could have Finisher going all the time, because I do want to be able to wipe this guy out and then Lightning Strike away so that Golab can be safe and kind of play that circle game where I'm going to take stuff away but not give anything up. But we end up doing a little bit of damage with our initial hit, and then for whatever reason I got chunked up on math, and the next hits do quite a bit of damage to that Tormentor and drop him, I think after only having to buy a couple attacks, really. I think it was, so we're buying our first attack, and I believe this is the one that drops the Tormentor. And given the state that Anamag's in and that the Blightbringer has already went, I need to cast Lightning Strike to get out of there, and then rile Golab up to full in order to make sure that Anamag's got a full stack next turn, which works out all right. I'm just glad that I was able to deal with that without any real issues at all. I haven't put Golab into much of anything without a bunch of buffs on him before. Not a bunch of buffs, but, it seemed like I was kind of worried about him not finishing it for nothing because it didn't take him a whole lot of effort to take down the Tormentor. And again, I'm pretty sure I calculated Locked Horns into that one. So, the other Tormentor gets pulled in by a Hellmouth Tentacle. I don't think I end up doing a ton of damage to the Tormentor. Never mind, I guess I do. I do a decent amount of damage to the Tormentor with the Hellmouth attack. The big reason for wanting to pull this in is just so that I can have the Warmongers charge in and take out another one. I had hoped to take out 3 heavies this turn, but now I'm really in this boat of 4 heavies. So I think that I don't know if it doesn't show good on me as a Legion player, right? Because I somehow got the Infernal player into this situation. I just wasn't thinking about how this was going to play out. And I'm not biased on one army versus the other. Like, I'm just trying to exercise my brain here and play the game a little bit. But it's definitely not looking good for the Infernal side right now. And you can see I think I also kind of wiped this out, but the wretch that was standing by those clouds became the tormentor. That's where we had backed it up. Well, I had backed it up so that I could get that tormentor in, because that was the intention. It just got missed. But it only takes a couple warmongers to take down this tormentor. Again, with the buffs they've got on them, I believe they have Fury of Strength on them this turn as well. So Anamag she went pretty deep in the tank to make sure she could get everything out and buff the things she needed to. The putting that on them, I didn't plan to get another tormentor. It's just like the situation presented itself, so I ended up getting it. And then the Chosen end up running up the side here to kind of engage a few things to make sure that they can't go where they want to, and I feel like that's good use for them. So coming over to the Infernal side, I'm in a big oof situation here. I've only got 2 heavies left over, and I've got Chosen just like choking me out real hard. Now I can probably kill a decent amount of those Chosen. The ones up on top are going to be a little bit more difficult, but I don't know if attrition is really like the goal here, because I think that the Anamag players lost so little that I think I'm just kind of like fighting to make sure that I don't lose more so than anything. But the more I look at the table, and after I fill up my essence, I think I might have skipped a part 2 where I paid tithe. So like on turn 2, another thing I forget as an Infernal player is to pay my tithe. So it's usually like the top of the next turn is when I do it, because I just forget about it. Thankfully, I haven't had any problems where like a beast can't pay their tithe and I have to worry about taking them off when my opponent made some choices to get into that heavy or something. So that hasn't gotten me in trouble yet, but I do need to think more about that or be more cognizant of it. As I sit here looking around at what I can do on the table, I do notice that there's still this big gap in the middle, and there's really nothing there. Those warmongers kind of diverted themselves to kill a heavy and got a little bit greedy. So I'm curious on the notion of, can Omodamos, with all of the speed tricks that I have, get to Anamag? And I think the way that I'm positioning everything out here, I believe that the way I've placed the Tormentor proxy, that Omodamos can in fact get to Anamag, but it'd be a little bit risky here. So I'd have to like take out the building and put down some actual hard widgets instead of using a tape measure to get the 12 inches to see if he can get in there. So instead I decide to try and make things a little bit more like interesting for myself, I guess. And I'm trying to engineer ways to get the objective gone, because if the objective goes, then there's no real question on whether Omodamos can get in or not. So I start off my turn by activating the Tormentor that's on the top end of the screen. He's got 2 jobs here. The first job is to get synergy up. So we end up... So that's the first goal of the Tormentor. The second one is that Shrieker's hanging out behind him, and there's only one Chosen that is engaging the Shrieker and stopping it from going places. So the other objective of this Tormentor is to get rid of that Chosen so that the Shrieker can get freed up, because he does have a boostable gun, and that's going to help me get the objective. So I need to make sure that that Shrieker can get into the mix as well, because he'd been topped off by cultists the previous turn. So my grab and smash does really nothing to the Chosen. There's nothing that happens there, and I have been taking my rapid healings into consideration. I've just been like subtracting them off the damage rolls. So I think this is going to be the last attack that the Tormentor takes on the Chosen, and ends up, or maybe I don't know why I'm hemming and hawing. Like when I sit here and I've gone over it already, I'm like, I know what the tormentor needs to do and why he needs to get rid of the chosen, but I think I might have been putting this plan together as I was going instead of really knowing what it was that I wanted to do right now. So let's see what I do. So I'm using Monpok dice to keep track of my synergy meter just to make sure that I don't forget about it. Valen Hawk ends up moving up a little, or no, that's not Valen, that's my Hermit. He moves up and puts up Master of Ruin and then repositions to make sure he gets Anamag and the objective into that bubble. So maybe the Tormentor that I had activated didn't kill the Chosen that was there. It must be, now it's all coming back to me. I just played this game last night, so it shouldn't be a mystery to me what happens here. But the Tormentor did come up short on completely killing the Chosen. I think it's sitting on one box, to be honest with you. But they were sitting at pretty high armor with all of the buffs from the Blightbringer and Anamag. So Valen Hawk makes it to the center, not because he needs, it's more so to clear a landing spot for the Shrieker. And then next up I've got Nicaea coming in on the objective, and she's shooting at dice -5, I think. Or at least I thought she was shooting at dice -5, so I didn't think she did any damage here, but then I realized that Master of Ruin is up, and that puts her at dice off 3, so she ends up doing 2 points of damage to that objective, which I think I mentally keep track of right now, and then put it on the table later because I think I get lost in my own thoughts and don't want to forget it. So the gate ends up activating and teleports Omodamos up. Roger comes up with him and then puts out Harmonious Exaltation so that I can get a free attack essentially out of a Flashing Blade. It'll just make sure that I can get to where I need to with Anamag and make sure she doesn't have, like, I don't have bad rolls in that she just transfers the good ones away, because she is camping on 2 Fury, so it's not like completely unlikely that she 100% dies from this. Next up, I think I've got Regna. She walks up and tries to put a boosted Hellfire into the objective, and that ends up being at dice off 2, so between her and Nicaea, they've done 10 damage so far, so that objective's sitting on 5 boxes. And again, I don't think I need to kill the objective to get Omodamos in. I think it's pretty... It's close, but it's not so close that I need to like really get down there and figure out what the distance is or where he needs to land to get it. But if I get, like I said, if I get rid of this objective, there's 100% no question that I can get in on Anamag. So I'm trying to figure out what to do with this Chosen that's holding up the Shrieker, because my gate isn't in range enough to shoot it, or at least I don't think it was in range enough to shoot it, and maybe... I'm pretty sure. I'll have to think about it for a minute just because I don't feel like it was close enough. But I end up having the Cultists activate, and they end up charging in on that one Chosen because I just need to do 1 box to it. And the first one connects, and these guys I think are swinging at POW 11, so it's like dice off 10, and I just need to do 1 damage to it. The first one whiffs it, and then the second one ends up getting exactly what it needed to kill that Chosen. And the Chosen does fail their tough check, so that was a good deal for me. Now the Shrieker is no longer engaged and can just kind of plod off and do his own little thing. I think Eilish ends up walking over and putting Puppet Master on Omodamos in case he just completely flubs something. And then this is where the Shrieker goes up and takes a boosted shot into the objective. Now it ends up clearing all of his essence in order to do this, but I'm just hoping to hit. And I end up connecting with a 7. I know that it's only defense 5, so I was looking up the POW on it, so I'm sitting at dice off 3 on this one. Ended up doing enough damage to get rid of the objective, so that's a good deal for me. Now we're finally sitting at, I think actually Omodamos is up because on turn 1 Anamag scores and I scored my flag because the Hellmouth Tentacle probably wasn't close enough to contest, or maybe we're 1-1 now. But now I can see that at 12 inches, or the 12-inch charge with feet, because Omodamos activates, he feats. He moves his 10 inches, and then he's able to close that gap with his 2-inch reach. I might have gotten a little, like, generous with the amount that I moved, but even moving back an inch, I'm still good. So I don't think there's a problem with what I did here in terms of the distance. So Synergy's sitting at max right now, which I think makes Omodamos mat 10 or 11. And Anamag's defensive stats aren't the greatest in the universe, so we end up connecting with a 10 right away. And I think she's sitting at, she's just inside the Blightbringer aura. I believe she's just inside it. So we end up being dice off maybe 5, was it? I can't remember the exact number for what I was off on, but we end up doing a pretty decent damage roll on the first shot and gets transferred off to the Blightbringer. The second one only does about 5 damage, I think, and she tanks that one. So Omodamos is buying another attack, and that one connects and does not a ton of damage, but enough to be worried about. And then we buy another attack, and when I had put Harmonious on me, I just put another focus on me, so or essence. So that's how I kept track of it. So another attack comes in, and that ends up crushing Anamag. And again, I forgot to take a tough check like I did the last time I had her die. But either way, I think Anamag was not long for this world, and Omodamos ended up pulling that one out from the clutches of defeat. So that was quite an interesting experience. I'm not sure how I completely feel about playing solo games right now. I think my mindset has more to do with it than anything. When I first approached the game playing from a single player aspect, I had thought, oh, this is going to be, an awesome game because it's going to be 2 players of equal skill battling it out, and we know everything that we can all do. But what I had noticed I was doing as the game was progressing is that I was kind of switching my mind off between sides. So when I went over to the Infernal side and played out my turn, especially after killing all those Hellmouth tentacles, I didn't even think about another Hellmouth tentacle spawning in and engaging the Tormentors so they couldn't countercharge off and kind of make it so that Legion had to play a little bit more tight with things instead of just really being so aggressive right away. I had no comprehension of that. And then when I went over to the Legion side, I had shut my brain off because I wasn't thinking about, well, Omodamos can just go and apply himself to Anamag's face and take 7 attacks on her and not even worry about it. That was just something that I hadn't thought of, and if I was back just like an inch or more, it wouldn't have happened. There's just no way that he would have been able to connect, and then it would have just been a grindy game for Legion to just, chew through the stuff, and Omodamos would just have a hard time trying to build back momentum after losing 4 heavies in one turn, which was really harsh. So I think there's merit to playing against yourself, but you definitely have to really slow the gameplay down and think about everything that can be done. I know that when I play against another player in Warmachine like I would normally do, I'm always kind of cognizant of what they can do and always thinking about things and taking my time. But in this game, I felt like I was so prepared for what each side was going to do that I didn't really think about it. I was almost like it was almost like playing against 2 different people who had no idea what the other's army did, because I got the gist of what Anamag can do from the Infernals side, and I got the gist of what Omodamos can do from the Legion side, but there were just weird gotchas that ended up happening in the game. Not that they were gotchas so much, you can plan for that stuff, you can I understand that the Hellmouth tentacles can spawn in and cause a bunch of problems for countercharging models, and I do understand that when Omodamos feats, he has a massive threat range that can really tank some damage with having synergy up and having access to a free flashing blade and a puppet master and then Master of Ruin on top of it. But for whatever reason, I just wasn't thinking about them. So there's a lot of intentional play I think you need to engage in, or at least some role play really that you need to engage in when you're doing that. And when I say role play, I mean, if I put this thing here, what's going to happen? And I think we all do that in our normal Warmachine games, but for whatever reason, I just felt overconfident against playing against myself because I thought that I would just have that all figured out already. So I feel like I'm going to be doing a couple more of these just to try and unlock the idea of what it's like to play against yourself and what to avoid and what to actually engage in, so that if anybody else wanted to play against themselves just in, on their own free time or whatever while you're sitting there doing nothing, that you could do that and kind of learn from the mistakes that I've made, or at least kind of get some idea of what to avoid, right? So I'm definitely interested in making more of these battle reports. I've got some other armies that I really want to play. I just picked up a Grimkin army I'm really excited to throw down and put some paint on. So if there's anything you want to know about that army, just put them in the comments below and I'll do some stuff around it. Otherwise, if you liked the video, like it. And if you enjoy the list building stuff and all the other Warmachine stuff I've got going on, subscribe to the channel. And if you have any questions, comments, or requests or anything, post those in the comments below too. I'm really looking forward to interacting with Warmachine more. I've been a long-time fan of the game, and I really am enjoying making this content for it and really liking the video process. I think the format is something that I also would like some feedback on, just because I'm not straying too far from what's been done by other people out there and what I've done in the past with some of my other videos. But if you have any comments on that or questions, suggestions, whatever, I'm more than happy to answer those questions or just find out what you're thinking about the videos in general, because I'm going to keep making them. So if there's something that rubs you the wrong way, just let me know and I can try and work around it. So it's a learning process, much like playing against yourself. So I hope you enjoyed my little rant afterwards and did enjoy the game. I look forward to seeing you in the next one, and hopefully that'll be out soon.